Hi, everyone. I'm John Lux. I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida, and welcome to another edition of Film Florida Friday. Film Florida Fridays are interactive conversations about current topics, initiatives, and relationship building in Florida's screen production industry. I want to take a moment first, though, to acknowledge the devastating wildfires that many of our friends and colleagues have been dealing with this month in Los Angeles, as well as the plane crash earlier this week in Washington, D.C. Our thoughts are certainly with everyone involved. But today we're going to have a discussion about navigating the film festival circuit. In a moment, our panelists will introduce themselves and we'll ask some questions. During that time, we're going to ask that everybody keep their microphones on mute to avoid background noise. After we've gotten through initial questions, we'll open it up to the audience for questions and conversations. At that time, please make sure you use the hand raising function under the React button so we can call on you. We're going to ask everybody to keep their questions and comments brief in the interest of time and out of the fairness of others that want an opportunity. As always, Film Florida Fridays are free to attend, but we hope you'll consider donating $20.25 for our 2025 fundraising campaign. The donation link will be posted in the chat box, and you can always find that on the top of our website. With that, let's have our panelists introduce themselves. We have a great panel today, all of which have had amazing success on the film festival circuit. So I'm looking forward to hearing their tips and tricks. So Stephen, let's go ahead and start with you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm Stephen Wise. I'm a writer, director, producer. My films and screenplays have won multiple awards. My current short film, The Walker, just had its premiere a couple months ago in London and won the Best Actor Award. But I've also been on the flip side. I've been running the Pensacon Short Film Festival for going on 12 years now. And I also was a screenplay judge for the Blue Cat Screenplay Competition and also for the Miami International Science Fiction Film Festival. It's a mouthful. So I have experience both as a filmmaker and from the film festival side.
Excellent. Elaine, why don't you go next?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Roberts. I'm based in Miami. I'm a writer, producer, director. I've collaborated with the Paris International Film Festival with Jenna Suru, the founder, for a couple of years. I've moderated panels and talked to the filmmakers there. So I have some experience with how film festivals work. And yeah, I've had my films in, big international film festivals. So here to help and offer any guidance.
Excellent. Kevin, how about you next?
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm Miami-based as well. I'm the co-founder of White Elephant Group. That is a film collective nonprofit here in Miami that we focus on career building, artist development. We commission projects. We also make our own films. We have our first feature film now premiering at Slam Dance next month. If I'm a little groggy, I've been all night working on our final delivery that's due today. So, but yeah, we focus on just South Florida and filmmakers in South Florida.
Excellent. Timothy, go ahead next.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Timothy Mark Davis. I am a producer, director, actor, sometimes writer. I work in the theater a lot. I run a nonprofit theater company based in Fort Lauderdale. I live in Broward County. But I've produced several short films, a couple micro budget feature films. A short I produced actually in collaboration with White Elephant Group, premiered at Tribeca a couple years ago. But I've had shorts and features premiere at several festivals around the country. So happy to help in any way I can today. Thanks for having us, John.
Absolutely. So let's start with a question for everybody. Why are independent film and film festivals so important? Elaine, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, they're important because they allow the artists to tell the stories, right? I mean, Hollywood is mostly generated, well, they are generated by the returns, so they focus on that. But the independent filmmakers, they're more driven by telling stories. There's diversity, and they're more focused on the art. So I think that's unique on its own.
Good. Kevin, how about you? Let's go next.
Yeah, they're important because I'm a big champion of regional filmmaking, and I think film festivals allow platforms for stories that normally wouldn't exist outside of the regions that they're developed in to actually have a broader audience. And if you build that audience in these spaces that you normally don't occupy, then you have more eyes on not only the region, but the filmmakers that are telling very specific stories that come from that region. So huge, huge benefit to independent filmmakers.
Timothy, thoughts?
Yeah, I think one thing, I mean, there's nothing like gathering together with a group of people in a movie theater. And so the value that I see, at least just from a craft level and from a growing as a storyteller, is that when you can get a room of people watching your film and then solicit some feedback, and even if that is anecdotal right after the screening, hearing what stood out to people, hearing what worked for people. I think you all know once you've been working on a film for several months and several years, you can't really see it anymore. You don't know what it's about. You don't know what's good or what's bad. It's just like, I got to get this thing out because I can't even watch it anymore. And then when you share it with an audience and you get that immediate feedback, I think it teaches you, okay, this is what worked. Let me dial that up in my next project. Like, okay, I didn't think this worked and they didn't think it worked. So I was correct that like this is a way that I can grow. So I think that sense of direct feedback and engagement is really valuable and not something you can get if you just send something out on a YouTube link and people are watching it at home on their laptop. You can get feedback that way, but it is different when you see it on the big screen and get that feedback right afterwards.
Yeah, you definitely get feedback on YouTube. We're not really sure whether they're referring to the project or just in general. Stephen, last thought there?
Well, to kind of build upon what Tim was saying, films are supposed to be seen. You make your film to be put out there for an audience, and film festivals, well, in theory, allow you to have an audience sitting there, hopefully in a movie theater, watching your work. And yeah, there's nothing like sitting in there with an audience and having them react to what you made. And if it's a comedy and people laugh, I mean, that's a big thrill. Or if you're making a horror movie and people are jumping at the right moments, that's amazing. But beyond that, film festivals also give you an opportunity to network with other filmmakers. And I've met so many different people in festivals around, well, here locally in Florida, but also around the country. And I've made some good friends and some good connections.
Good, good. Another one for everybody. Let's get some different perspective. And Stephen, we'll stick with you on to start this next one. How do you choose the right film festival for your film?
Well, I kind of do it methodically. I mean, there's several factors that I put into it. One is geography. Uh, if there's festivals that are regional that I could drive to, for instance, it makes it easier for me to get there, for my cast and crew to get there. A lot of times festivals, especially the smaller ones, they rely on ticket sales. And so if they know, hey, here's a local-ish film and we have a likelihood of a lot of the people coming to see that particular film, they may be more apt to select your film in that way. But beyond that, you look at the cost. There's some festivals that are really cost prohibitive, others that are very, very cheap, very inexpensive. So you kind of look at what your budget is, but also primarily look at what the genre of your film is. I've made, for instance, I made a fantasy film, and I started targeting festivals that were specifically for fantasy. The more general, broad festivals, if you have a very specific genre, sometimes it's a little bit harder to be selected because they have such a wide variety of submissions.
Right.
And so you kind of target it down there. So I go through and make a list and look at what's reasonable, and I look at how long the festival's been in existence. If it's a first year festival, is it really a thing? Where if it's been around for 25 years, then you kind of have to weigh, well, how many people are submitting to it? Are they getting thousands upon thousands of submissions? Or, so those are some factors. And I try to build relationships with some of the festivals as well. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my rundown.
Good. Elaine, thoughts on choosing the right film festival for your film?
I mean, me personally, yeah. Research, depending on my genre, because I have different films, so I'm not gonna submit a drama to a horror, right? Film festival. So research, see what they offer, if they have connections, if you do win or place in something. Some, like Steven said, if they're relatively young, is it something that you want to spend the money on? I guess just see what your objective is. If they have big events that you want to go to and network. It all depends, but definitely just focus on researching the festivals and if they're a good fit for your project.
Yeah. Kevin?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that a little bit, I think the research part is really important. When I pick festivals, what I tend to do is once I have my film, I kind of look at other comparable films, so like films that had played the year prior, 2 years prior, and then see what their festival trajectory is, and then try to find where that film will fit in that festival trajectory. And I think another thing too, to what Stephen was saying, like new film festivals sometimes are actually to your benefit, because if you see who's putting on the festival, who's running the festival, sometimes you'll find there are programmers who have done larger festivals and they're putting on their own festivals. So it kind of helps you start meeting people in the broader film space, and you can start using that to, instead of just blindly submitting, you're like, hey, I'm going to send an email to such and such because I met them at the festival and they're programming this other festival I want to go to. So
Yeah.
definitely the research and like looking into it is really big.
Excellent. Timothy, last thoughts from you?
I feel like most of the good answers have been picked off already. But
Sorry.
No, that's fine. You can make me go last every time. I can handle it. I think the thing that came to mind for me is that you just part of this whole experience is just being really ruthless with your expectations. And I think the research is a part of that. I think knowing that, okay, I'm going to go to a film festival. This doesn't mean my film's going to get distributed and picked up and they're going to pay me. And I think most of us probably know this at this point. So why am I going? And I think to have your ego massaged is an okay reason to go to a film festival, to be completely honest. I think we all need that sense of encouragement sometimes to be like, okay, someone accepted my film and now it's going to be screened. And so I want to go and experience that. And what does that experience look like? Anything with like lots of workshops. I love a festival that has that. There's value in like, again, that networking piece, but also education and training that can happen at a festival. I think meeting other filmmakers, I'm sure many of you have heard this as well, but networking with people who are at your level rather than sort of chasing people who are maybe 10 or 15 years ahead of you and begging for the crumbs, but looking at your peers and rising together, which I think is something that Kevin and Weg are really, really great at. But that's an energy you can bring into the festival. So when I'm, looking at what festival to attend, I think the proximity thing is huge. Is this something that I can attend easily and inexpensively? So there's a financial piece of it. There's sort of a validation piece of it. There's a networking piece of it. And then, like has been said already, there's does my film even fit here? Don't waste 30 to $100 on a submission if they've never programmed a film in your genre before.
Excellent points. All right, Timothy, let's stick with you. We'll give you the first bite at this one. Most common mistakes, any pitfalls that you've run into or heard of that people should avoid?
See, now I don't have time to think about it. So it's like I'll never be happy, John. That's what I'm learning here.
Okay, good to know.
I do think that I speak from experience on this sort of the shotgun approach, right? Where it's just like, I gotta get in somewhere. I gotta get this thing in a festival. So I'm going to break the bank and submit to 100 film festivals. And, maybe I get some waivers because I know a programmer, because I emailed them and asked for something, or I got a discount email from Film Freeway, but you're still breaking the bank to some regard. I think that is where that balance of, okay, I want this to be seen. I want to get some feedback. I want to connect with other filmmakers. I want my sort of artistic soul to be validated a little bit, but at what cost? right? And I mean that in a literal sense, at what cost. And I think if you are just submitting to 100 festivals non-strategically, which I think many of us have probably done early in our careers, that would be a common mistake that I would encourage you to seek some mentorship. Ask someone who's maybe further along, you have a connection within your community, about where should I submit, or what should my strategy be, or do you think I should submit to this festival? Just get another voice in your head that tells you don't submit to 100 festivals. So yeah, that would be my one point.
Elaine, you got anything to add there? I don't want to go through and necessarily ask everybody just so they can agree with Timothy, but I mean, Elaine, Stephen, Kevin, I mean, just kind of unmute and go ahead and let it rip if you have something to add.
No, I agree with him. Working a little bit with the film festivals, also if they submit their film when it's not really done or completely ready, like why do it? You're just gonna spend your money and you're not gonna get selected. So, make sure you have make sure your film's done and as good as it can be, because if not, what's the point? And again, if you don't do your research and you're submitting to a festival that wants to focus on one genre, and then they're receiving a festival that's something completely different, you're just spending your money and you're not going to get anything back.
Yeah,
Kevin,
and
go ahead.
another big one, another big one. Honestly, it's even once you get into a festival, one of the pitfalls that I had, because you're super excited, you're like, you get into like a big festival, you just want to watch movies and you want to go to all these screenings, and then I come back and I'm like, oh, I saw all these great movies, and I forgot that I'm there working. Essentially, you're kind of trying to meet people, you're trying to get a better understanding of scope in where you fit in the broader landscape. And if you're just constantly just watching screenings when you're at festivals, you kind of lose that a little bit, because the films are great, but the people are what make the industry, and they make the films and they make the connections, and like that's where you start building a broader sense of like a national community or regional community. So I think that's another big pitfall. It's like just focus that when you're there, you're working essentially.
Yeah, and no, I love the thought of it's a work trip. It's not a recreation trip. Yeah, Stephen, go ahead.
Well, I have a couple points to make. One, kind of building upon what Elaine said about making your film, finish your film, because I have seen submissions where, like, I kind of wonder, why are they spending money to submit this when it's not technically really there yet? But the biggest problem is audio. If if you have bad audio, do everything you can to fix it. Plan on having a good sound mixer on set, have someone good that knows what they're doing with post-production, because bad audio will kill your film. Even if you have just amazing picture, bad audio will make it a bad movie. If you have bad picture, you can kind of pass it off as style. People are a little bit more forgiving for that, but you can't go with bad audio. But also from a film festival standpoint, Film Freeway is the portal that most festivals use for submissions. And a mistake that I see very often is people, especially with college kids that are submitting their college work, they might use a college email address. Well, then they graduate and they still have that college email address connected to that film that's still out there waiting for submissions, and the festival can't communicate with them. Or I've also heard people say, "Oh yeah, I don't use that email." Well, why are you using it? Make sure that you have the means for festivals to communicate with you. Because you're spending money. You've spent money on your film. You've put all this hard work into it, and then you are submitting it to festivals. And if they can't reach out to you, you just wasted all that money and effort. And then one last thing, and I kind of mentioned it before, but really be careful with scams. There are a lot of scam festivals out there, and um, you know, I've run into them myself. Just do your due diligence with them. Be really careful. If you see where it's non-listed on, a non-public listing on Film Freeway, there's a problem there. If it's one of these that it's like an award mill where you have to pay to submit and then pay for every category that you could possibly win an award in, you might want to be wary of it. If it says it's an online festival, online only, well, where is it being shown? Is it actually being shown through an online portal, or is it just out there in the ether somewhere where nobody is watching your film? Just so be careful with that. Those are some points I wanted to highlight.
Stephen, you mentioned the email. We got a quick comment or question from the chat box. I'll follow up with you. Does using Gmail have any unprofessional connotations on email?
No, nobody pays attention to that. It's
Yeah.
just as long as you can, have a way to for the filmmaker to communicate with you. It doesn't hurt to have your phone number on there. Sometimes you need your address because if the festival's mailing you an award, for instance, and it's like, where's this person? I don't know. So just,
Yeah.
be professional with the way that you set up your Film Freeway account. Have a good poster. If you can't design a poster yourself, find someone, go to Fiverr. There are resources out there for relatively inexpensive that can do a pretty good poster for you. Cut a trailer and have that on there on Film Freeway. Write your good author's note. Just do things like that will make you stand out a little bit more.
Yeah. Stephen, I want to stick with you with our next question as well. Your screenwriting has won awards at various film festivals. Share a little bit about your experience and best practices for submitting screenwriting work. And are there any different tips for screenwriters submitting versus a fully produced project?
Well, there are a couple different venues that you can go through for screenwriting. One is the film festivals. Not every film festival has a screenplay contest, and if they do have it listed, make sure that it is for a written screenplay and not the produced screenplay, which is a great category by itself. But if you have just a script that you want to submit, check to see that. But there are also screenplay contests like Blue Cat or Page Turner, for instance, that just focus on screenplays. And with them, they usually have like different categories that they kind of narrow down the entries. So, the first pool is quarterfinalists, then semifinalists, and then finalists, and then finally they choose the top, three winners, let's say. And each category then is an honor in itself because you're looking at, okay, you made the top 100 or top 25 or top whatever, and that's something that you can then use on your resume. For film festivals, it's a little bit different. They usually just send you like a laurel for being selected, and then they'll choose you. But you might get feedback. Some festivals and contests do that. Blue Cat, for instance, has really good feedback. The two different judges read your work and provide feedback, and then you can rewrite it and resubmit it. For future levels, I guess, if you want to call it that. But yeah, and just like with films, make sure that your work is done. Rewrite as much as you can. Do a table read with actors. That always helps, where you can hear actors actually say the lines that you wrote to see if it's, if the lines work, and get feedback from people, and be kind of judicial with feedback that you accept, because everybody has an opinion on things. But make sure that you proofread. Make sure that you're not sending it out there with a bunch of typos. And trust me, I've read a lot of screenplays that are unreadable because people just don't go through and proofread, and things like that will knock you out of competition very easily.
Yeah. Tim, I want to jump down to you. As you mentioned, you're involved in a lot of different aspects of the industry: film, theater, producer, writer, actor. So you have a unique view from a lot of different angles. How has your diverse skill set assisted you in navigating the film festival circuit?
Yeah, I think probably the thing where that served me the most is just being able to talk to a lot of different people. When I get on I come from the theater world, and then I have sort of like forced my way into the film world in the last 5 or so years. And there's a strong division when you walk on a film set between the crew and the cast that I always find. There's just like a certain energy around film crew. And I think, I don't have to describe the energy that actors can bring, positive or negative. And I kind of share in both of those energies and enjoy both of them, but I see myself as a bridge between them. So that's where, kind of bringing that sense in the theater where there's a lot of a little more crossover. It's like a weird theater kid could be a stage manager or a lighting designer or an actor. It's a little more, we're all on the same team. I see a little more division in the film sense. And so I'm always encouraging, when I'm producing projects to the directors who oftentimes are very technically minded, very concerned about the shot, concerned about the visuals, and they don't spend much time with the actors, which I just come from that school of thought that at the end of the day, barring good sound, to Steven's point, the most important thing is the story and the acting. And you can get away with camera stuff that's maybe not Hollywood level, but if you have good performances and if you have an emotionally engaging story or an experimental story, or at least something that's going to challenge people or make them think or surprise them, then you've got something worth watching. And acting is an extremely vulnerable and challenging and weird profession and art form. And I think a lot of times on the crew side, people don't realize that an actor is bringing an incredible amount of insecurity and fear, even if they seem cool, to a set. And if everyone's just kind of standing around like on their phones while the camera's rolling, or like standing right behind where your eye line is supposed to be, or there's just kind of like a blah energy, or you're just like talking constantly. There's just like a lot of things to think about in terms of the acting process. You want actors to be relaxed. You want them to feel comfortable. You want to have some space to play. Ideally, you can rehearse a little bit. Ideally, your shoot schedule isn't so condensed that you can get some takes in there. So I feel like bridging that gap between the different parts of the production is one of the things that I bring to the table, and that wearing all those different hats has enriched my experience.
Well, and you've created work in a couple of different genres. If you look at your work on Thank You Places versus The Cost, it's two very different types of projects. How does your approach to film festivals change with each project you are involved in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've made a few short documentaries, and those are probably a little different. That if anyone's like considers himself a documentary filmmaker here, um, these are projects where I group to create the project, and I kind of shifted it into, I don't just want this to be a video for a client. I want this to be a short documentary that could stand on its own. So I haven't really invested much in pursuing a festival run for the short documentary things I've done. I'm actually shooting one on Monday where that is in the back of my mind. I am sort of thinking like, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach here, and I want this to be something that's maybe viable beyond just a product I'm delivering to a client. And that was part of the conversation with the client as well. We want to expand the reach of this message that you're trying to tell. I think if we can do it in this way, there might be some opportunity for it to have a larger national presence, or get in more places in the state of Florida, and the story that you're trying to tell in Broward County could have a little more reach on throughout the country, if we do it in this way, right? If it's not just kind of inner B-roll, you don't submit that don't submit that to something. And so that's where I would say I don't know that I'm fully equipped to answer that question, because I am sort of still in that micro budget narrative, produced several things, directed a couple of my own now, but still kind of exploring what it means to make something in a different genre and pair it with the right festival.
Excellent. Kevin, I want to jump over to you. You mentioned the project that you're taking to Slamdance this year. Share a little bit about the film festival process for this project.
Yeah, For this project, it's actually a little unique in the sense that it's a drama, and it's also based on true events that happened in Miami. Without getting into the weeds of it, so we're early in our festival career. Slamdance is actually going to be the premiere of the film, but we already have a robust festival strategy. And when we were breaking down how we can be effective with the film, one of the things that we asked was, where can we play the film where it's reflective of the communities that are represented in the film? Where can we play the film in spaces where it might not be a commonplace to play a film or represent communities in that? And that, like, process of trying to weed out what we can and can't submit to, or what we should and shouldn't submit to, played a really big role. So, for example, when we were looking, Slam, because it's so early in the year, we're like, okay, if we premiere here, we lose our national premiere, but it's a good national premiere for the film. So then we want to go into regional premiere. So the next festival that we're looking at, that we still don't know yet, but it's going to be Miami Film Festival here, because it's essentially like a really core part of what the storytelling is in that film. So having it play a festival like Miami is really important to us, and having it play in both spaces that the communities that are represented in that film both don't normally occupy and occupy is really big for the film. And then looking past that, we start looking into what international premieres would look like for that project, and where in the spaces that this would play, where would it be most effective? A big majority of the film, it's a multi-language film, so it's English and then Creole, and then that affects where we're going to look for international festivals. Who wants to see a film like this? Also something that's based on a true story that was a national headline news. And all those factors are essentially what's planning out our year, and then also being cost effective in that. Back to when we were initially talking about like that shotgun approach to applications, it's not as detail oriented as we would want to be with the film, because sometimes you might have a film get accepted and just play in a space that it just doesn't really make sense for the narrative that you're building with the film and the trajectory you're trying to build for your career in the festival circuit. Because once you start playing certain festivals, other festivals will take notice, and other festivals will know what that film's trajectory is. And if it's all over the place, it's really hard to build that narrative as a filmmaker, where it's like, this is what we wanted to do with this film.
That makes sense. So Kevin and Stephen, I'm going to come back to you on the question I was going to ask about being on the other side of the film festival process. But Kevin, since you mentioned international, Elaine, I want to jump over to you, because you've, your work has been recognized in a couple of different international film festivals. So, and you've collaborated on productions with theatrical release deals as well. Talk a little bit more about those experiences and what you attribute that, international success that you've had.
I mean, with the international success, I don't think it's much different than if you have domestic. I think it's just, if I just focused, my objective was to go international. That's what I wanted to do. As an artist, I want to see if my projects can be relatable globally, universally, so it was my focus. And as far as the success for that, I just attribute it to the project. If it's a good story, if it's told well, if it's entertaining, if it has decent production quality, good audio and everything, and it all works, then yeah, you're gonna have success. But going international, it's the same process, just research, see what that film in the past, what films they've shown, what films have won, and if it aligns with your project, then why not? You'll be able to tell a lot if you get in, if it's screened. And I mean, as far as traveling there, then that'll be up to you, because that's a different cost. Right. But and two, I mean, I'm a big believer in reaching out to, go to the website and see who's a contact and see who you could reach out to and speak to them and, get a dialogue going. I mean, don't be too aggressive and annoying, but get a dialogue going if you can. And, more often than not, they're willing to talk back to the filmmakers and you get your questions and you see a little bit what would work. But I hope that answered your question. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was good. And Kevin, like I said, I want to go back to you because you've served on multiple film juries. How did you get to that point? And talk about how that experience has helped your approach on, kind of the creation side of the film festival process. So you kind of you have a sense of what's going on both sides.
Yeah, it's funny because when I served in the jury for Slam Dance and for Mammoth Lakes. And going into it, I didn't really think much about how it would affect the filmmaking side of everything, but it actually had a really profound effect in how I approached the festival circuit, because once you're in those juries and you're discussing the films, you realize that what you're really discussing is the filmmaker, because the film itself, it speaks for itself. It has, whatever narrative it's trying to portray in the festival circuit. But as a jury member, what you're really trying to see is the person or the team behind each film, because we've been in deliberations where there's like, this film is great, it's played blah 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 festival, it's had all these international premieres, it's done this, it's done that, and then you contextualize it within the trajectory of the project, and then you contextualize it with what are the other films that are playing with it. And one of the conversations we always have is, would this win have a profound effect on the film project? And if the answer is no, then we have a really detailed discussion on, well, who would this help? Who would this benefit? Who would this elevate? Because if we're, playing, a smaller festival, and this film had already won, a grand jury prize and like 2 other massive festivals, another grand jury prize isn't going to really affect or change that filmmaker's career. So that's like a big part of the discussion. Another big part of the discussion is kind of contextualizing their story and their heritage and their upbringing. Like a big thing is, a lot of these juries are very diverse, and there's people from a lot of different backgrounds. And there are certain films that, I was like, oh, they're great, they're good. And then another jury member swayed me because they were able to provide a little bit more perspective on where this person's coming from, because they have similar backgrounds, similar upbringings. And when you're on that other side, you start taking that information and you start using it when you're developing your own projects, because you get a little bit of that, at least me personally, like it's not that I need the validation, but the validation's nice. And you second guess yourself whenever you're creating projects, because you're like, I don't think anyone's going to like this, or I don't think anyone's going to be interested in this. And when you're in that jury, you're like, this person's speaking to me, and this person I want to help. And when you see that other side, when I go into the filmmaking, I'm like, I just need to reach out to one person. If one person thinks this is cool, I'm going to do it. And that perspective really helps in that process.
Good. Stephen, you've also been on the other side of the table, as you mentioned in your intro. Talk about those experiences and how it's helped you as a content creator.
Well, of course, I've judged some screenplay competitions, but I've also run a short film festival. And so, there is differences between some of the major festivals that show feature films and the ones that focus just on short films. So from my perspective regarding shorts, one of the things that I've learned is, don't take it personally if you don't get selected. It's I've been doing this for a while, and it still kind of hurts when you get that not selected thing. It's like, oh man. But there's many different reasons why a festival may not have selected. And kind of like what Kevin was saying, that, the team of judges will discuss, sometimes heatedly. I mean, we've had the judges that I work with, we've got into some pretty heavy duty arguments over films sometimes where just different perspectives. One person might really love a film and another just absolutely hates it for some reason. And then it's like, well, where does this fit into our programming, or does it? And a lot of times it's not just the fact that, based on the quality of the film, but it's, you know, there's just a lot of factors. Where does it fit into the programming? Do we have time to show everything that we would like to show? That especially when you deal with festivals that have a kind of a mix of, features and shorts and documentaries and whatnot. They may only have, a 2 hour block that they can show short films, for instance. And if they get 100 submissions, yeah, they got to narrow it down and figure out, okay, what works best for this particular programming. So, yeah, you kind of have to think about that from a filmmaking perspective, that it may not be you, but then again, if you continually get not selected, then maybe it's time to kind of analyze to see, where you can improve upon.
Yeah. So we got a couple more of our scripted questions. There has been a huge amount of dialogue in the chat box. I haven't been able to keep up with most of it, so I apologize for that. But if you have questions, please go ahead and start using the hand raising function under the React button, and we'll get people lined up, and we'll bring you down so people can see you and hear you, and you can ask your question. So we'll do that in a minute, but I do want to go around the grid one time and mention, like, I posted in the chat box all of the Film Florida member film festivals, which obviously are, well, frankly, they're the most important ones to us because they support our organization. But I wanted to go to each of you and just kind of talk a little bit about, obviously, we're here in Florida. We have a great number of film festivals in the state. What are some of the unique opportunities within the Florida Film Festival circuit? Timothy, let's go with you first.
I mean, I think when you are, I think thinking of yourself as a local filmmaker, as a regional filmmaker, I think that's, especially when you're starting out, and I, still very much consider myself in that realm of, I'm from Broward County, I'm from Fort Lauderdale. I want to get to know the people in my community. I want to get to know people from Miami. I want to get to know the people at the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival and the Miami Film Festival and the Florida Film Festival. And you sort of start spreading your geographic footprint, I guess you could say. So I think that's the largest opportunity, is that it is just easier to network in a place where you live. And I know a lot of people kind of do this. I live in LA and New York and Miami. This is a common thing, which I think is totally fine at a certain level of your career. But I also think there's real value to say, no, like, no, I'm a Florida filmmaker, or I'm a Broward County filmmaker, I'm a South Florida filmmaker, wherever you may be calling in from, and nurturing the relationships of the people there. Because ultimately, when you're trying to make a project and you're kind of like, okay, I don't have any money, I don't know any actors, or I don't know any DPs, or I need an editor. Events like this, webinars like this, local festivals, that's where you're going to start to meet those people. And you're going to start to meet those people who live down the street from you, or who live 30 minutes away, an hour away. So you are building a talent pool by which to draw from, that is just much more accessible than trying to do a casting out of New York and fly people down and get them housing. And you may not be there yet, right? You may not be ready to hire a casting director. So you just need to ask, and this happens to me all the time. You just need to ask your buddy who's an actor, do you know anyone who blank? I get those messages all the time. Kevin sends me those messages. I get those messages all the time because I know a lot of actors. It's just one of the things that I bring to the table. But they're all local, right? So there's a real power in investing in your local network, because at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. It's all about people. It's all about the creative team that's bringing it together. And the easiest place to nurture that is walk out your front door and not have to take a 4-hour flight, but go have coffee 10 minutes away.
Yeah, excellent. Elaine, you got any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's Miami, right? It's a great place for filming. It's a hot spot. It's not LA, but there's a lot of professionals in the industry here. And I mean, unique opportunities for filmmakers, I would say the community and the culture. You could really take advantage of that if you're a filmmaker and you want to tell stories about your culture, your background, and things like that. I mean, we're pretty diverse here. So I think it's a perfect place to do that. And then the film circuits, like the film festivals here, they have their Miami Film Festival does it. They have their programs for that, and they want to highlight films that, have these strong voices and strong focus on culture and things like that. So I would say that's definitely unique and something to take advantage of here in Miami, and networking as well.
Good. Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on everything that Timothy and Elaine said, like, you know, the regional film festivals and the local film festivals are key components on not only, pushing your filmmaking career in the festival circuit, but also um, having you grow as an artist or as a creative within the space. Like, you know, Tim, I consider a pillar of this community. Like all of South Florida, Tim is an amazing resource. And, anytime I see Tim somewhere, I'm like, all right, we should be here because we you end up attracting like-minded individuals when you're working in regional spaces, and you start building a collective voice. And when you build a collective voice, you might be screaming into the void by yourself, but once you start having these people around you that are championing your work or of helping your work, and they live and breathe and like create in these spaces that you occupy, you start developing these really unique stories, these really unique ideas, these really unique sense of community that you're building each other up. And when you're doing regional work, that's what's most important, because what ends up happening is you go into all of these other spaces and you might meet some fantastic filmmakers. There's wonderful filmmakers that I know, but they don't live where I live. They don't create where I create. So it's almost like I'll see them once a year, catch up a little bit, and then we just exchange niceties. And then sometimes we'll send each other a funny meme or an article on, Instagram or email, right? But the people that I meet in regional and local film festivals, these are people that I'm like, hey, let's go grab a coffee. Hey, let's hang out. Let's do this. And more often than not, we end up creating something, or we end up doing something. Like Know Me Now, a big component of Know Me was Tim helping us out. Tim was like a massive support for us. And, he's local. And that's why, we know a bunch of people from LA, a bunch of people from New York, and, they were great and they were helpful, but they weren't in the weeds with us. They weren't in the trenches with us. So I think going into these festivals, meeting these people, it really, really builds a sense of identity for you as a creative and for you as a member of this community.
Yeah. Now, Stephen, you're going to have similar, but also very different perspective on this one, being from Northwest Florida.
Yeah. Well, I actually travel a lot to Central Florida and South Florida and whatnot too. So, and I have to do a little plug for my own festival, the Pensacon Short Film Festival. It's part of the programming for Pensacon, which is a pop culture convention. But anyways, Florida itself has just really some amazing festivals, and really, it's hard to compete with what Florida offers. Sure, if you go to Los Angeles, I mean, there's a festival every weekend down there, but Florida kind of has a unique mixture, and but some of them offer some really great opportunities for filmmakers. The Orlando Film Festival, for instance, has a pitch session where you can learn how to pitch your project, and then so they have this whole workshop, and then you have a competition to pitch to see, who did it best. The Sunscreen Film Festival in St. Pete they team up with the local film commission, And for filmmakers that are attending, they give you a little tour of the city and see what locations are available. That's a great opportunity. And there's some that bring in celebrity guests or actors or directors or whatnot, and you can mingle with them. Obviously, there's networking opportunities. And so, just look and see what's out there, because we do have some really great opportunities with film festivals for our local filmmakers.
Excellent. And Stephen, quick from the chat box, say the name of your film festival again.
Pensacon, Pensacon. And again, it's a pop culture convention. It's going to be February 14th through 16th. So, yeah, Valentine's Day weekend.
Coming up. Okay, so we're going to do some audience questions here, and then we'll check our time. So Ella and Lee, go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, I lost you guys. You were right up there. Go ahead and unmute yourself, and then go ahead and we'll bring you down so everybody can see you.
Oh, okay, thank you. And thanks to the panel. Everything was really great. And I'm mom to Ella. She's a student filmmaker. So we're always grateful when the film festivals have student categories. Often she's entering the high school categories, but not many have them for younger than that. But I have a very specific question. I put it in the chat. When it comes to the poster, I noticed a lot of the festivals, they request the film again and the poster, even though it's hosted on Film Freeway. And Ella this year is fortunate to have won some awards already with this film that just got accepted to Vero Beach and playing at Love Your Shorts next weekend, 2 weeks. Anyway, would you send a poster that then had all the laurels on it from, the previous, or would you give them a clean version? I don't know if they feel like, they want to have a little more proprietary to show the film, or do you want to show that off? It's a simple technical question.
All right, which panelist wants that? Go ahead and unmute. Stephen, you go first.
If I could jump in, I don't really, personally, I don't think it matters that much. I've seen it both ways. I've submitted posters both ways. Sometimes, and it depends on the festival, because like Orlando, for instance, will hang the posters up in the theater so attendees can walk through and see it. And in fact, just kind of building on that too, a lot of times you can create postcards to have sitting on tables, so people will go through and pick them up and go, "Oh, really want to see this film." So sometimes having laurels on the poster might be a draw for people to go and watch your film.
Good. Thank you, Ella and Lee. I'm gonna remove that spotlight. All right, Valerie, you're up next. So I'll bring you down here and go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hello, everyone. I am asking particularly about a project that I'm wanting to do this fall. And what I would like to do is do a short version with a complete story and submit that to film festivals, hopefully, and to be able to do a feature version later on. How does the submission process differ in terms of that and generating interest in, the feature version? And also it's multi-pronged, and this might be more for Stephen and John. I'm wanting to also have it be an example of how much money can be brought into the local economy, because I'm wanting to do it in my hometown that's up in the Panhandle in Calhoun County. So just wanted to get your thoughts in terms of that process and anything that I need to have ready if I need to go ahead and have the feature script or just an outline. Just wanted some guidance about that.
Who wants that one? Kevin, go ahead.
I can speak to that a little bit, just because WEG has done a myriad of shorts, and some of them have been in the process of being turned into features. I think that there's like a very subtle pitfall when you're developing from a short to a feature. One of them is you're trying to fit the feature within the space of a short. And usually when I come into projects with a feature and a short, I usually use the analogy where a feature is a novel and a short's a poem. And really what you're trying to get across with the short is more of an idea, a feeling, and not just a full narrative. And the reason why is because when you're looking to develop, you want people to come in with the prospect of what it can be and how it can kind of fill itself out. So if you're in a festival and you have a short and someone's interested and they're like, hey, let's like what would a feature version of this look like? If you have the feature written out, that's great. What really would sell it more is a pitch deck, and having the deck set up is really important, because you already have an idea of the feeling, the tone that you're trying to get across. Now what you want to sell is the execution, the perspective, the scope is what you're really trying to get across.
Yeah, I can share a couple examples from my own experience. Years ago, um, my co-writer and I were trying to sell a screenplay, and we had a lot of meetings with Hollywood, and everybody read the script, and we weren't getting a whole lot of traction with people interested in actually buying it. So we thought, well, let's do kind of like what you're talking about, do a short version of it. The mistake that we made, though, was instead of focusing on here's a complete story, it was almost not quite a sizzle reel, but kind of along those veins, where we pulled some key scenes to dramatize and just kind of say, okay, here's kind of what it's going to look like on film. But it really didn't get any traction at film festivals. It played a couple places, but it was just kind of a weird, unique thing that didn't have a complete beginning, middle, and end. Then more recently, I directed a TV pilot. I did not write it. And we were fortunate that currently now a lot of festivals have an actual TV pilot category. So we were able to get into a lot, and we won several awards with it. And the idea with that, again, was here's the pilot. We can then take it and try to make a bigger project, in this case, a TV series out of it. That was out of my hands. That was up to producers to go and sell, and they're still out there working on it. So neither one to me was that successful, at least as of yet. I can't speak on regarding the TV pilot if that ever goes anywhere. But my advice would be make sure that it's a complete story. It has a beginning, middle, and end, and it's narrow the scope down. Can you tell a sliver of that story in 15 minutes? Where if you blow it up to a complete feature film that's 90 minutes long, that's its own thing also. Because it's really hard if you're just doing, a piecemeal type of thing for it to get any traction.
Yeah, I've got it to a 10 to 15 minute short where I can tell the full story, the key points, but also it's a good programming length, I feel, for film festivals.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much, Valerie. So, okay, so I have two things just that I've learned that I'll throw out, kind of tips and tricks, and then I want to go around to the grid, and I want to ask for horror stories, not literal horror stories, like bad experiences from film festivals that you guys have participated in. But here's the thing: if you're doing a short, make it a short, make it in that short range. If you're doing a feature, make it a feature. But nobody wants to sit through a feature at a film festival that's 2 hours and 20 minutes. So that's not a feature. And also don't make your project 45 minutes, because that's neither a short nor a feature. And it's amazing how many scripts we get at Film Florida for our grants and scholarships that do that. They're features that are 2 hours plus, or they're shorts that are 30 minutes, and we don't even really know what to do with those. And it actually makes it a really easy kind of weed out process, because if you can't categorize it into something, it just doesn't fit. Okay, so if anybody has any like bad experiences, we talked about how important research is and understanding who you're submitting to. Well, I'm wondering if some of that came from firsthand experience, because you've maybe made some mistakes in that. So, Kevin, you're shaking your head. So go ahead and unmute. No names. We don't want to mention any names of film festivals or anything like that. But just so people understand what they could get themselves into if they don't do what you guys are all suggesting.
Yeah. It's funny because this is a horror story / a win at the same time, but horrific. When we were screening, we had submitted blindly to a film festival, and we got in. We were really excited. It was very early in our career, and it was a short, and it was a drama depicting like a relationship falling apart. And when we went to the festival, we were watching the block that everything was screening in, and it was about 6 films in the block, and we were kind of smashed somewhere in the middle of that block. But every film surrounding it was a genre horror film. And I was in complete shock. And I was talking to the programmer, and they were like, yeah, your film is probably one of like the scariest films that I had seen. Like, that's why I put it in the block. And I was like, but it's a drama. Like, it's literally a melodrama. And he was like, yeah, I know, but it was like, it rung true to me because I had that exact same thing happen to me, and it was the scariest thing that's ever happened in my life. And I just slapped it in this like block, and it was so out of, because like clearly the audience was genre horror, so they were just zoned out the whole time. But what ended up happening was one of the people in the audience ended up buying the short for distribution online. So it was a horror slash, a win. But at the time, I was like mortified during the screening.
Nice, nice. And Timothy, Elaine, Stephen, you got any bad experiences?
Oh no, go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's I do have some bad experiences, but I'm not sure I've discerned the lesson from them yet. Um, but I've been to 2 festivals now in the last 6 years or so, where I was screening a micro budget feature, and they were not in town, so I was traveling to go to them, but I really didn't do any legwork because I'm busy person. And I got there, and no one showed up to the screenings. So I traveled somewhere to a regional festival, and there was no one at my screening, which I don't think there's a more devastating feeling than traveling somewhere and your movie's supposed to play and no one shows up. So I think the lesson there is I should probably just quit and never make another film again. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I think the lesson there is don't travel somewhere unless you're going to do some legwork and see, is this really worth it for me to attend? And do I have the time to nurture some relationships and reach out to the other filmmakers who are going to be there and do some, maybe look at some past attendees of the festival and be like, hey, how was this experience? Like, did people show up? Were people there? And it wasn't like it was, oh, this festival is just bursting at the seams. One of them was just like programmatically, they did like an awards thing, and everyone at the festival was there, and they were like, and now we're going to the after party. And the after party was the same time that my film was screening. I kind of got screwed by the festival. And I actually wrote them and said, that really sucked, and you shouldn't do that to people in the future. But I think it's just like, if you're gonna travel somewhere specifically, do some research, see if it's worth it. Obviously, the bigger festivals, it's probably going to be worth it. But some of those regional ones or smaller community ones, you want to be careful about just, oh, I got on a festival, let me spend $300 and go. And because, maybe when you get there, you don't have time to hand out flyers and convince strangers to come see your film when it's screening in 12 hours. So those were tough experiences.
I can relate a little bit, Timothy. I was invited, this is a handful of years ago, invited to speak on a panel at a small local film festival. It was within an hour drive of me. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll put in the time and I'll go. And it was like, it's good for Film Florida. We'll talk about the organization. Maybe I'll get a member or two out of it. And got there, and there was like 4 people in the audience for the panel. There were more people on the panel than there was in the audience. So I can relate a little bit in that respect. I was like, okay, I guess I'm not a big enough draw, that's for sure. So, Stephen, you had something you were going to say?
Well, Tim, I've had that same experience. So, yeah. Horror story regarding, fortunately, I was able to stop it before I got in too deep. But talking about scams, there was a festival a few years ago that it had started actually in Miami, and then they moved to Las Vegas for some reason. And so when I initially had kind of flagged them that, okay, I want to submit this because it was in Florida, suddenly it was in Las Vegas. I'm like, that's weird. And when I looked into it a little bit more, they had this huge program going on. They had Vivica A. Fox that was going to be there, and they had like these special rates for the hotel. It was I forgot which hotel it was at, like the MGM or something. And but they had like tours where you could go see the Grand Canyon or something. And it was unrelated to the film festival itself. But I was just thinking, well, okay, this is kind of interesting. I'd like to maybe participate in this. And then I started seeing ads pop up in Facebook for the exact same event with a different name.
Mm.
And I'm like, what's this all about? And so I emailed them and said, hey, this other event popped up same week, but same layout, same thing. And you bought the hotel tickets through their website, not through the hotel's website. And I was like, this something's not right. And they said, oh yeah. Well, we merged with another event, and both events are happening at the same time, just under different names, and they do a slightly different thing, and it didn't make any sense to me. Then I saw a third one pop up, and I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. What is going on? And I actually called the hotel, and they had no knowledge of this event.
Mm.
So I contacted Film Freeway, told them about it, and they ended up delisting them. So it just went
Mm.
away. But it was like, so this is kind of one of those things where I talk about be very careful and do your research into festivals.
Yeah. Nina, are you still with us? I saw your name in the chat earlier. If you are, go ahead and unmute yourself, because Nina is with the Global Peace Film Festival, who is a longtime member of Film Florida. We love her, love the film festival. And I know I want to get just quick thought on what everybody's saying, since you're from the film festival perspective, as well as I know you have a new kind of partnership announcement for the Global Peace Film Festival that's worth throwing out there.
Yeah, well, hi everyone. Great to be with you. A terrific panel. A lot of good information. And John, I want to comment on something that you said about length of films in festivals. I run the Global Peace Film Festival. I also consult for filmmakers on festival strategy and things like that. So because of new kinds of distribution and everything, the lengths are different these days. You're totally right about 2 hours, 20 minutes. Unless it's absolutely extraordinary, nobody wants to sit through that. But the 45-minute films, more festivals, because those work on streaming platforms, more festivals are looking more kindly, towards what we used to call those mediums. And they've always worked for us because we like to have robust conversations after the films. And so if you're sitting through a 90-minute film and then have another half-hour conversation, it gets a little long. So we've always used those, but different festivals also have different lengths for short films. And so really read the information on Film Freeway very carefully, because you can, we get our short films are up to 40 minutes, and we get a lot of submissions that are 39 minutes and 59 seconds. And when you look at it, it's actually that's without the credits. That's okay for us, but it isn't for a lot of people. So be very careful about reading submission and reading through all the details in what people put for their submissions, for what they're looking for in submissions. Our announcement is, well, actually, I put in the chat that anybody on this Zoom, if you do have a film you think would fit with the Global Peace Film Festival, do email me. I'll send you a discount code. Another thing that I'd say is it's really important to communicate with festivals if you have any questions. Like I think it's Mark who had the question about his film that he finished shooting in 2021. That's a question, that somebody at the film, the contact information at the film festival will be able to help you with, because you don't want to waste their time. They don't want to waste your money. So that's one thing that's very important. I want to expand on what all the speakers were saying about, you know, finding in terms of looking for where to submit their films. Look where your actors are from. Look where, if it's a documentary, where your subjects are from, and that expands your geography, because there will be and make sure to put that in your cover letter. We're interested in your festival because we have this connection with, with where you are. And that's not just for Florida film festivals. We really do look for films from Florida from Florida filmmakers. We prioritize it partly because they're local and they can come to the festival, but partly because we do, a lot of the Florida film festivals do get support or used to get support from the state. And we want to boost Florida filmmaking. So that's another thing. Actually, the announcement is probably a little premature. I can't make it just yet. So, but we do have some exciting news coming up.
Well, then
And
we'll say when Nina is ready to announce, she's going to send it to me, and I'm going to get it out on Film Florida's social media pages. So make sure you look out for that. Wait till nice tease there, Nina.
so I'm
All
also
right.
happy to answer any other questions that people might have. So either in the chat or.
And for everybody, Nina had posted that information about her email address, and anybody here that wants the discount code for Global Peace Film Festival to email her. I copied and pasted that, so it's also in the chat a second time. So if anybody needs to get that, you can grab that. So Nina, thank you so much for your time, for your ongoing support. And everybody, make sure you check out the Global Peace Film Festival along with the other film festivals that we've posted about in the chat box. So as we wrap up here, I'm just going to give everybody on the grid, all of our panelists, one time to plug a website, upcoming project, email address if you want to give that out, anything you want, last thoughts on anything. Stephen, you go first.
Well, I've already plugged Pensacon. By the way, my film The Walker is going to be playing there, and it's also going to be playing in Hollywood at the Golden State Film Festival the same weekend. So can't be in two places at once, unfortunately. If you're interested in reading some of my work, my screenplays, I've got two of my award-winning screenplays, Paradigm and Maelstrom, published on Amazon. And you can go to my website, Stephen J. Wise, the J has to be in there, if you want to watch some of my short films.
Excellent. Elaine?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on social media, so you guys could reach me there at Elaine Roberts, or you could email me at elaine@elainefilms.com, and I'm happy to help anyone that needs any guidance on anything.
Excellent. Timothy?
Ooh, unmute. I'll throw some links in the chat here, but yeah, you can, I have a website. You can send me an email, follow me on Instagram. I also do a monthly newsletter where I kind of inquire. I share things that I'm wrestling with as a creator, and ask questions and ask for feedback. And I found that that's a little more of an intentional way to communicate with people and source feedback and answer questions, and almost like a pen pal situation. So if you want to join my newsletter, I'd love to continue the conversation there. And I will put all those various links in the chat right now.
Kevin, last to you. Go ahead and plug anything for you and from WEG as well.
Yeah, well, WEG is actually throwing an event March 29th through the 30th in collaborations with the Urban Film Festival in Film Lauderdale. It's called the South Florida Film Forum. We are bringing in a bunch of executives, distributors, filmmakers, financiers to South Florida, and we're having a big event at Mad Arts in Dania Beach. So if you guys want more information on that, the best way to stay in contact with WEG is we have our Instagram page. So it's WEG Films and White Elephant Group. Go there. We're going to be posting a bunch of stuff. We just revealed the poster last week, and we're really excited. We're working really hard on getting that to everyone here.
And I don't want to speak too soon, but we're hoping that Film Florida will have a presence at the South Florida Film Forum as well. That's the plan, at least. So we're all kind of working together here for the same cause. So I appreciate all of that. So that is going to wrap up another edition of Film Florida Friday. Thanks to Stephen, Timothy, Kevin, and Elaine for being with us. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. As always, thanks to Katie Collins for helping wrangle and prepare for Film Florida Friday each month. Our next Film Florida Friday is Friday, March 7th, with a discussion about women in production in honor of Women's History Month. Be on the lookout for email blast and our social media pages. I also put that in the chat box as well. As always, thanks to our Film Florida members for their continued support. If you're not a member of Film Florida, can't say this enough, we hope you will consider joining the organization at filmflorida.org. Keep up with everything we're doing on social media pages. And finally, check out the Film Florida podcast, which is available on most major podcast outlets. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Thanks again for being here, and stay safe, everybody.